My name is Marco Benevento, and I'm one of the representatives for Forum Palestina. Our organization gathers several associations and committees in one single entity. It was born in 2001, and our very first act was the planning of a demonstration on March 19. This event gathered about 150,000 people. Since its foundation, Forum Palestina acted in support of the Palestinian cause, and the reasons are the same historically recognized for Italy's fight against German occupation during World War II. We do believe that Palestinian citizens are facing a similar situation, and that's why we think that they have all the rights to defend themselves against Israeli illegal occupation.
How would you describe anti-Zionism? Does it have anything to do with Judaism?
We can say that the anti-Zionist battle has now become a fight for freedom, in defense of vital democratic spaces. In these days, we have a deputy from PDL, Fayama Nierstein, a woman with Jewish roots, but also with a right-wing cultural background, who is trying to obtain official recognition for the link between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. In this country, there has always been someone trying hardly to impose this equation throughout the last decades. Some students from the University of Florence were accused for this reason, but also many authors and intellectuals have been suffering for isolation due to their blaming of Israel's aggressive policy. Their opposition often led to public accusation of anti-Semitism. We strongly reject any equivalence between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And to make this clear, we should specify what we mean when we talk about anti-Zionism. At the beginning, Zionism was very far from being a religious movement. It was rather opposed by rabbis on the religious side and also accused on the laic side for being racist and partial by the Jewish unions of that time. That's why we believe that what they're trying to establish today is a real mess, and frankly, also unacceptable by any sane person.
So, being Italian, how did you get involved in this cause? What sparked your interest?
My family was hit during World War II by fascism. Being heavily touched by those terrible events, my personal experience is something relatively insignificant if compared to the wide empathy shared by the majority of Italian citizens toward Palestinians. And this is happening because this situation in the Middle East area is a huge injustice, something that, despite the work of some press and opinion makers, it is impossible to hide to the public. And this phenomenon is precisely what urges people like me on working not only in favor of the Palestinian people, but also for the right to existence and independence of other people, as the Lebanese and the Iraqis in the Middle East. And I also think that our troops should not be in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, these positions do not agree with the policies that move the economy in a country like Italy.
Che fa interesse e che muove l'economia di un paese come l'Italia.
Can you explain the anti-Zionism movement in Italy? How many members? How did it all begin?
The Italian anti-Zionism movement is divided into different areas. There is a strong Catholic front working alone, outside the interests of our organization, which is anyway worthy of our respect, since they're involved in very big projects. One of these is the Columba operation, whose participants provide daily assistance to Palestinian children going to school. under the menace of rocks thrown by Israeli settlers. And this movement is not officially recognized by the Church, in my opinion, because they are afraid of a serious conflict with the powerful Israeli lobbies. Then we have an area which is very close unions of right-wing parties. They believe that Israel and Palestine have an equal right to exist. But our position is different, since we think that the existence itself of an Israeli state denies the creation of a legitimate Palestinian state. Our side of the Italian anti-Zionism movement differs because that, as I said, it is a network of associations based all over the Italian territory.
There was an anti-Zionism event held at the end of November in 2009. What were the motives behind it?
We have been dreaming for years the idea of a conference on Zionism, and this dream was partly held by our hesitations, partly by our difficulties, and partly by our limits, since there is a bad habit in Italy which consists in acting without documenting enough on a particular issue. Our organization, which is made up of political activists, decide to face this issue throughout the symposium, whose guests were professors, intellectuals, journalists, Palestinian politicians, and even Israeli politicians. Among them, we invited Jeff Halper, who is a very well-known right-wing Zionist. I don't know exactly if this definition might be considered acceptable, but in my case, he works in Israel to help rebuild those houses destroyed by the Israeli army.
Can you describe the event's agenda and outcome?
Our conference revolved around 10 open questions, so that anyone could take part in the discussion and reach his or her own conclusions. And these are the conclusions that will guide the development of a future political strategy. But for us, the most important achievement of our event has been the realization of the first conference in Italy on what is Zionism. And also, according to the conclusions of our conference, we believe that the meaning of Zionism is well represented in this map. This is fulfillment of the original Zionist project. You can see how it was at the beginning, where green space represents Palestine and white space represent Israel. After the separation in 47-48, and then, piece by piece, Israel eats all the green spaces of Palestine without leaving any kind of corridor. A state like Israel, with these features, and I also mean political features, stitched in the core of the Middle East area, with considerable resources in terms of oil, communication area, and control over the Persian Gulf, the proximity to Iran, Syria, and Egypt. We can see these elements all together as a clear and accomplished colonial project.
Fa parte di un progetto colonialista.